Hey folks, I just wanted to supplement what you see in the docs plus colors regarding dashes. Maybe we could even call this a lesson on dashes. So what's the deal with dashes? First of all, dashes, let's take a look. This is a lesson on dashes. Let me see if I can crank up the zoom a little bit so you can see what I'm actually saying here. Okay, so what about dashes? First, let's try making a circle, and we'll put it at the center of the canvas, and we'll give it a radius of 100. And then let's go ahead and throw some dashes in because we're excited and we want to get going, right? So I'm just going to say dashes equals true. If you go to docs plus colors, you will see something along those lines. Let me see if I can find that. If you search in docs plus colors, you will see there's stuff about dashes under general shape properties and under lines and arrows. We'll take a quick look at general shape properties. Here they talk about dashes. They say you can set them to, by default they're set to false, but you can set it to true. Oh, this is a new addition. I'm glad that they added this. Or you can set it to what's known as a tuple, where you can provide the dashes with a dash width and a gap width. And here you can actually see an example. So yay! So this is probably one of the best places to go under docs plus colors to get help on this. This was general shape properties. This was not lines. So be careful about that. Let's go ahead and run this and see how it looks. And there we go. Sure enough, I see dashes. I see green dashes. That is the rectangle. And I see purple dashes. That's going over here. Now, there's a couple interesting things about dashes that I'd like to share with you, as long as I'm here and I'm taking the time to discuss this. Let's take a look. First of all, I'm going to go ahead and try to put dashes in my circle by going dashes equals true. So I'm going to go ahead and say run, and you'll notice that I get a black circle, and it doesn't look like there's any dashes. The dashes should be on the border of the circle. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the fill. I'm just going to, maybe a lighter color. Fill equals blue, and let's see what it looks like. Well, I still don't see any dashes on the border, but again, maybe I just can't see them. So let's try something like changing the border color. To do that, we'll say border equals, and let's put in a color like black. And then I'll go ahead and I'll run. And now, I don't know if you can see it, but it does look like there's some little black dashes there right now. And furthermore, you can see over in the inspector, I have two colors. One is blue and one is black. And there's only one shape, and that's a circle. I'm kind of curious what the inspector looks like if I get rid of that border. Can I see? Let's go ahead and say run. And I come here, and even though I say dashes is true, I cannot see any dashes. And I only see one color blue. So it looks like to me you absolutely must assign a color to the border if you want your dashes to show up. So we'll go, again, border equals, and we'll, you know what, I'm going to do white just as a change of pace. There we go. And maybe that shows up a little bit better for you in the video. What else? The other thing is that in the docs plus colors, it says that you can not just do dashes equal, you can do dashes equals true, and it'll assign a default dash width and gap width, or you can give it the dash width and the gap width. You can give it those two things, okay? And the way you must do it is you must say dashes equals parentheses dash width comma gap width, okay? Now, obviously I don't need to put the words dash width and gap width in here. They're just two numbers. But if I made a variable called dash width or a variable called gap width, I could put them in place of the numbers 5 and 30. By the way, the other thing that they do here is they introduce a new word to us called a tuple, and all that means is two things in parentheses with a comma in between, or at least for our purposes, that's all we're concerned about for now. it turns out when you get into more advanced coding, you may run into tuples where you have pairs of numbers or pairs of information together. Anyways, let's go ahead back. Here we go. Now, what else can we do here? Oh, let's go ahead and put a tuple in. Let's play around with this. So what does it mean dash width and gap width? First of all, I'm kind of curious. What if I put dash width, comma, gap width in here and try running it? What happens? I get an error message, and it says there's no such thing as dash width or gap width. Dash width is not defined. What I really got to do is put numbers in here. So I'm going to go ahead and try putting in something like maybe 5, comma 20, and let's see what that looks like. Run. So what you can see now, I hope you can see, is that the dashes are very small. They're 5 in length, and the gaps are very big. They're 20 in length. I'm going to try a different color just to see if it shows up a little better. Not sure if it will, but let us pray. Yeah, it's not really much better, so I'm going to stick with the white. Okay. One thing I could do to make them a little bigger is I could expand the border width. But then they look really funky, but I'm going to try it anyways just to show you. So I'm going to put a border width of 5, and then you can see them a little more clearly. And you can see the dashes are all very small, and the gaps between them are very big. Let's reverse it. Let's make the dashes very big and the gaps between them very small. And we'll run that, and there you can, hopefully you can see that the white dashes are very big and the gaps are very small. What about lines? Because you'll notice if you go to Docs plus Colors and you search for dashes, they say in general shape properties and in lines. It turns out that if you go to look in lines, there's not quite as much information about dashes and how to use them. So I strongly recommend that if you need information on dashes, go to general shape properties and look here. Or find this video and look for it. Okay, let's go back to the sandbox. So let's try putting in a line with some dashes. So I'll do a line, and my x1 will be 100, and my y1 will be like 100 also, so it kind of appears at the top of the screen. And then I'll do a x2 of 300. And we'll do a y2 of 300 also. No, not 300, 100. And let's see how that works. So run. There's my line. Let's lift it up a little bit. Let's make my y's more like maybe 75. And there we go. There we go. We will run. Okay, now let's go ahead and try dashes. So dashes equals true. First, we'll try with the most basic default settings. That is, it looks to me like the dash width and the gap width is about the same, and I'm not sure what it's set to. Maybe 5 and 5. We could easily figure it out by playing around. Let's try 5, 5. See if it looks the same. Hey, it does. A good guess on my part. Okay, so let's try some different sizes like 5, 20. So the dash width will be smaller and the gap will be bigger. And sure enough, that's what happens. And let's switch them around. Oh, you'll notice here when I'm doing the line, you'll notice that I don't have to specify the border color. But I did when I used the shape circle. Okay, so if you're doing circles or rectangles or polygons or whatever, and you want to add dashes, you must specify the border color apparently. So let's go ahead and see what if I have a big dash and a small gap. Sure enough, that's what it looks like. Okay, one last thing I'm going to cover, because you've been so patient, is what about if I had something like a variable, okay? And in that variable, I specified different dashes, a different kind of dash width and maybe a gap width, okay? Variables. Let me think about this for a sec. So there are several different ways that I could assign the dash width and the gap width using variables. One thing that I could do is I could do something like app.dashWidth equal to whatever number I want. Let's do different numbers just to make it fun. We'll make dash width 10. And then app dot, well, I'm going to hold off on putting anything in there for the gap width for now. But once I do that, I can go ahead and I can use variables in here. So I know there is at least one exercise where they ask you to make dashes show up. Oh, let's try something. So, we already know that if I put dash width here, nothing will happen. So I'm going to go ahead and hit run, and the circle just, there's an error message. If I want this, let's see. I'm kind of curious about this. Let's say I set this to 10 and run it. We can see what the circle dashes look like. Again, let's do it 20 to make it a little more interesting. But you'll notice that just because app.dash_width is set to 10, it may or may not do anything. I'm going to set the dash width to 50, and let's look and see if it changes the dash width size. Looks like it does not. The only way that we can use the dash width to change the size is if we take this number, app.dash_width, and we put it inside here. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to put app.dash_width into my dashes tuple, and then let's see how this goes. So I'm going to go ahead and hit run, and now we can see we went back to a dash size of 10 and a gap of 5. Yay! And it's all because I used this variable here. If I wanted to make the gap width dependent on the dash width, again, if I wanted to make the gap width dependent on the dash width, I could just do this. I could just put something like 30 minus app.dash_width in as the number for the gap width. Okay, I could do that. So we're going to try that and see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and hit run. And sure enough, it looks like I'm getting a dash width of about 10, but the gap looks bigger than that because 30 minus 10 is 20, and that's a bigger gap. I could also do all kinds of math with the dash width. I could say dash width times 3, and that would set the gap width. Okay, so I'll go ahead and run. And there we go. We can see that the gap width is pretty big. You'll notice that at one part here, you'll notice right here, the gap width doesn't look the same size as the rest. That is a problem that you'll run into with shapes that are continuous, like a circle or a rectangle. Is that at some point that they meet, the dashes and the gaps meet, and they may not have a perfect gap width or dash size when they meet, but that's no big deal. The rest of this guy is meeting all the criteria. Okay, that's everything that I wanted to say about dashes and dash width and gap width, and I'll leave you with that.